Okay, so thank you again so much for allowing Brit+Co to interview you. My name is Jasmine Williams, and I'm a staff writer there. And I cover all of our book coverage from book clubs to, oh, here's the new summer books that you should be checking out, and as well as author interviews. So I am so honored to be able to have this conversation with you and talk about all things this thread of gold. So, my very first question to you is how are you kind of making space for yourself right now, just in general in life, and how are you reclaiming your own narrative as a Black woman?
Wow, that is such a good question because I wrote about this at length, right? You kind of do all of this activism and outreach, and then you forget that if you're not looking after yourself, you're not going to be able to keep going with that. And I think I'm trying to practice just being more mindful with how I spend my time and where I put my energy. And I think before I was very much, yes, of course, you need help. I will help you. Yes, I will do everything. Yes, I will work 5 full-time jobs because I need to prove something to who knows who, someone. And now I think it's about, okay, let's kind of let life happen without feeling the need to control it. And I think also, yeah, when I say being mindful, I just think I can't do everything. And it's recognizing that and knowing that actually we are more effective in our work if we've given ourselves the space to kind of see what comes to us in the silence, to borrow a phrase from Michaela Cole. And I think trying to embrace that silence, which is easier said than done, but that's really how I'm trying to look after myself on a personal level, and then encouraging others to do the same. You know, my friends and my family is also, I think, what I'm doing as a Black woman. We have to also encourage each other to do that. And I think it's somehow about seeing someone else carve out that space for themselves that kind of somehow gives other people the courage to do the same.
Hmm. And that's something that you actually touch on in chapter two, just that thought of what am I trying to prove to someone? And, you know, Black women, or just women in general, and I would say Black women, we have such a hard time feeling like we don't have to prove anything to anyone, whether it's, hey, I deserve to be respected and valued. So, my question to you now is why do you think it's so hard for us to let go of this? I have something to prove. I have to be super ambitious to get ahead and succeed in life just to get a little bit of something.
Hmm. I mean, obviously, the kind of first answer is historically, traditionally, we have never been believed and never been respected and never been seen as people who could be kind of leading the way and blazing a trail, even though within our own circles and within our own people, we know that we're doing that. But in terms of, I guess, the majority kind of white figures, that wasn't the case. But I also think there's something else now where it's that we have worked so hard to show that we are capable of everything we know we are. And it's very hard to let go of that because it seems as though if we let go, we'll stop and we'll fall off and we'll fall behind. And I think the next step for our liberation and empowerment is actually to be able to say, no, you know what? I don't need to be doing all the time to show that I am successful or that I'm, empowered. I think it's about being able to recognize that we can, yeah, be, just be, nothing on the end of that, just be.
Yeah, and you talk about so many monumental women's stories in there, from Nina Simone to even Beyonce. And I just think it's amazing how you tie your own experiences in with the things that these women have done, especially talking about how they've reclaimed their narratives and how they've kind of resisted against sexism and racism and things of that nature. So, when you were sitting down and writing the bones of the story, how did the stories from the women in your life kind of help you kind of piece together your own stories and saying, hey, I want to make sure that, Black women, this part of their story is actually championed?
It's such an interesting question because when I first had the idea for what this book would be, which was kind of, I knew I wanted it to be a celebration and I knew that I didn't want it to be, in chronological order or sort of a historical book. I wanted to bring women together because I knew that that was kind of the connections. I knew it was about the connections and I was working on it and it was, I was happy-ish with it, but I was like, something is missing and I don't know what it is. And eventually, someone just said to me, like, what is it? Like, why are you telling this story? And I think it was that question. I was like, well, yeah, why? What is my connection to these women? Oh, I know how my life has been changed by discovering Hattie McDaniel and, what she went through, or by the music I've listened to, Nina Simone. So it's kind of that realization that, oh, I am also part of this narrative, and one day somebody else. And I always imagine like a little 5-year-old version of me, or, my nieces, that sort of age, they are going to come up and they are then going to pass the mantle on to the next generation to do the same. And it was something about recognizing I sit in this tapestry and I am weaving my own thread that somehow enabled me to feel confident, I think, to write this story. Because what I hope and pray that it will do as it connects with readers is encourage every single person who picks it up to see that they too are part of this story. And when one of us is empowered, we bring someone else up with us. So that was the biggest kind of key to unlocking it. From there, I felt free to kind of go even further. It didn't just have to be women that I'd come across in my studies and in my life. It was kind of like going even further than that. Okay, so we've got the Aunt Jemima figure. Who's the real woman behind her? And then I started to feel a bit like an archaeologist or something. I was just, digging and uncovering. And that felt like it made sense because I was always reflecting on what that meant for me or for those around me. And then the book became something bigger. It began to expand and include poetry and include interviews I did with 50 Black women about what beauty meant to them. And it just became something wider than a kind of historical retelling of, the women that history forgot.
Mm-hmm. And speaking of your the women in your life, you do talk a lot about your grandmother and mother, which I love. I love the matriarchal references and that close tie that you have with them. So, if you don't mind sharing, what's one of your favorite stories that your grandmother shared with you?
Oh my gosh. I mean, she's the most amazing woman. She moved to the UK in the 60s and sent one by one over for her children from Jamaica. So she actually came at first on her own. So my mum and all of her siblings were raised by their grandmother in Jamaica. So already I think this is amazing. And she came over and she was desperate to be a midwife. She really wanted to be a midwife. But at that time in the hospitals, Black women weren't allowed to deliver babies. It was just the law at the time. But what she did was she got a job as, I guess, just below a nurse. So she was working in the hospital on this ward. And over time, she never actually delivered the babies, but she was always the nurse on hand. And she told me so many amazing stories that she was the first Black woman ever to work at the Royal Gwent Hospital in Wales, where she still lives now. And I interviewed her last year. I actually filmed this interview. It was amazing, but she still speaks now to the next generations of the different nurses and, of course, now midwives who are there because of her. And then there was one other Black woman who was there. So I think that it just speaks to me of her tenacity. She had to be fearless. She had to be bold. That can't have been easy, leaving your children, 6 children in Jamaica, and sending one by one for when you could afford to kind of have them, and moving from, the space and the sun to this tiny house in rainy England, not being able to do the job that you dreamt of, but finding a way anyway. And I think it's this kind of, yeah, tenacity that connects all of these women. Often the way wasn't given to them, but they found a path regardless. So I think about that a lot. And she's so funny as well. You're interviewing, she'll just be laughing and teasing and joking. And I just love that.
Oh my gosh, that reminds me of my step grandmother. She's from Jamaica and she had 3 kids and pretty much moved to Florida. From well, my stepdad was born in the Bahamas, so kind of like Bahamians and Jamaican, and so moved to Florida. And she also has that same resilience and so hilarious. So hilarious. Like I always tell people, I'm like, listen, if you have a West Indian family member, like you're gonna be laughing for days, for days. And also the amount of strength that they instill in their children and their grandchildren. That's one thing that she's really big on as well. And so speaking about that strength, how do you feel that your grandmother and your mother's tenacity lives on in you? And then I know you also mentioned that you have found yourself kind of finding ways to also be silent, which is a little bit new territory. Like, how are you learning to balance both of these things?
Yeah, I think it's so interesting because every generation is able to go a bit further, and I see that. And my mum, she was studying before she had us, and then had me, my two sisters, so three children, and then went back to university and started working part-time over my childhood. And then when I was a kind of older teenager, she was doing her PhD, and she's now a doctor of psychology, which was always her dream. She's always the person that everyone is talking about their problems to, and but now she does that for a living. And I see that it didn't necessarily happen in the time frame that, for example, I have been blessed and able to go on with my studies because of what my mother did before me, because of what her mother did before her. But I see that kind of they have given me the space with the sacrifices that they have made. And I think growing up, I still carry the feeling that I had to make the most of, all of these chances that I've been given, and I needed to keep going, keep going. But that's not actually what they want. Of course, they're happy for anything I do, they're happy for me to be pursuing my dream. But also, my mum is the first person to tell me, go and take a day off. And I think this is also this fascinating thing, they see what we don't see at this point because we're still, in this young, like, go get it energy. And my mum looks at me and she just says, no, 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 what's this? No, no, take a step back. What are you doing for you? So I think, again, I just am so fascinated by what we pass on. And I can't help but think, and I think you see this in the final chapter, Letter to My Daughter, it's to the daughter I hope I one day have. What is it that I want to pass on? And it is something about this sense of, yes, do everything you dream of. The world is yours, but don't forget to take a rest, and don't forget that silence is okay too. And so many things can come to you, like this book can come to you when you give yourself the space from your job with the United Nations and when you're on this treadmill. Take a step back, and then who knows what may come from that. So I
Mm-hmm.
think that's really, yeah, really exciting.
It is. And, just talking about, this book coming to you, what point were you at when you had like the first idea for this book? Like, what was going on in your life? What were you influenced by? What were you kind of going through, if anything?
Yeah, it actually started life weirdly in 2016 as my master's dissertation, broadly speaking. So I wrote my thesis on how Black women use food as a means of resistance. So starting with Aunt Jemima and ending with Beyonce's Lemonade, because it's 2016. So I kind of traced a food history, but kind of looked at an alternative recognition of like the Aunt Jemima figure and Mammy figure that we've dismissed, obviously. I tried to see what we could find if we kind of looked at them in a different way. And I loved writing that. And I wrote it quite creatively. I wrote it as a sort of menu, starter, main, and dessert. And I just had this sense of like, there's something in this and I want to make this further. So I kind of had this project after graduating where I was just kind of researching different, always still in the realm of food, different women and seeing how I could connect their narratives. But I didn't yet know what that would look like. And then over time, starting to work as an actor and being in the creative spaces. And I began to think, not just academically, but I sort of realized I think this is something that deserves to be not just an academic telling of these women, but let's get their stories out to the world. The world deserves and should know of these women. We shouldn't only know of, Rosa Parks and Michelle Obama. We should know about Claudette Colvin. And, that was the start of it. But I wrote it over years. So it crossed, Roe v. Wade being overturned, and it crossed seismic events in my own life at the time. I went through an abortion of my own around that time, and I think I kind of had these huge life experiences at the same time as I was recognizing the women who'd gone before me, and losing a friend, losing my uncle. I think all of those things, a global pandemic, suddenly it became more important than ever that we had a celebratory, empowering narrative of our ancestors that we could hold on to, but also that we could pass down. And it's, I think, as much as about looking back as it is about what we carry with us into the future. So it does feel a bit like a piece of my soul has come out and gone into this. Yeah.
And that, wow, first of all, that is a lot to experience at one time. I almost feel like between 2016 and 2020, we're kind of like, I don't know if there was just like a global shift taking place during that time. Those felt like
Mhm.
very, very pivotal moments for a lot of people.
Mhm.
And just knowing everything from your academic studies to your own experiences and learning about the stories of other women in history. How would you describe this thread of gold in 3 words, if you can pick three?
A joyful hand outstretched.
Mm, I love that. That definitely feels spot on. Just like I said, I feel so warm reading it. So I love that. Love that. And so with this next section, I kind of want to. I call it like a rapid fire section, but it's just really more so our readers can get to know a little bit more about you. So first question is, what's one thing that you love to do, or really, how do you like to unwind after like a really long, stressful day?
I don't know if we call it in the US, but I'm a wild swimmer. So I jump into freezing cold lakes and I swim, and it is the space, the one of the only spaces where I just feel like I shake things off. My phone can't come in the water with me, obviously. Nobody else wants to come in the water with me because they don't want to be cold. The space where I just breathe and I feel free. And yeah, it got me through, this moment of grief in the 2020. That's when I started it. But now it's this routine that just brings me peace and joy. I would really advocate it for anyone who's interested. I made a whole film about it. I'm obsessed.
I love that. Love it. Love it. And I know that you do, you also are a filmmaker. So, what's your favorite part of the filmmaking process?
I mean, that is just the hardest question, but I will go probably the beginning and the end. So, like from writing a script and like, really conceptualizing, okay, I think we've got this. I think this is what we're going to go into production with. But then that end thing where you're actually, you're on sets and you can look around and you just see everyone is here bringing this world that used to only exist in my head. It's coming to life. And then the very end moment when you have that premiere for the first time, you're dressed up, you're on the red carpet, and you see the film that you've created that hopefully connects with people who will speak to you afterwards. And it's a full circle thing, I think. So that's not one answer. Let's say the magic of seeing something come to life and the communities that you build in the process.
Hmm. I love that. Love that. And if you can tell me, what is your favorite vacation that you ever took? Like, where did you go? What food did you eat? Who was with you? Where did you go exploring?
Okay, your questions are unbelievable, just to say. Like, they're so good.
Thank you.
I love this. I am going to pick because I think it was the holiday that changed me the most. Madagascar. I think I was 19 and I went for a month and I lived on a beach camp. I don't think I'd want to do this now, by the way, but at the time it was incredible. I lived on a beach camp and I swam in the sea every day and we kind of found the food ourselves and cooked it over the fire. And it was this real kind of sense that anything is possible. We can live off the land and
Mhm.
we can live, as this sort of community. And there was this adorable girl called Freda. She was 4 and she became like a little baby sister and, made friends for life there. And just going somewhere like that is so different from anywhere I'd ever been before and probably anywhere I'll ever go again, but just again, a sense of peace. I think I come back to that. Having said that, I also just had my birthday last week and I was in Cannes with all my best friends and my family, and it was glamorous and it was gorgeous and it was so joyful. So maybe we do two, both ends of the spectrum.
I like that, but you know what? It's all about duality. I think, you have your really peaceful moments and then you have the moments where you're like, okay, I'm just gonna get really dressed up and all of my friends and my family are gonna be here. We're gonna have a really great time. So I love both of those answers. I'll take both, honestly.
Ew, validating me. I love this.
And
Thank
my last question to you, and I don't know if it might be hard, but besides your grandmother and your mother, if you
you.
could have dinner with any three of the women, or any of the women really that you wrote about in this thread of gold, who would you have dinner with? And just what kind of foods would you eat, and what kind of conversations would you love to have with them?
Okay. That is the hardest question I've ever been asked. I mean, the first person instantly that came to mind is Stagecoach Mary, just because I was just fascinated by her. She was, a woman way ahead of her time. And the fact that, the town kind of made a national holiday for her. She was the only woman allowed into bars when women weren't. Just the fact that she delivered the mail and fought off wolves. And I'd like to ask her, was she ever scared? And what did that feel like? And I think she'd be a really fascinating, her life is just so rich. I think she'd be a fascinating guest. Hattie McDaniel, definitely, because I guess you can tell from she got probably the most, page time in the book. But I just, oh, I feel so connected to her, and I can't really pinpoint why, but she's a woman who dared to defy. I mean, they all did, but she really dared to defy what people thought of her, and she lived her own life, and she has made it possible for all of us who have come after her in terms of actors and production and all of that, but also she was just fearlessly herself. So I think, yeah, she would be an amazing guest. And then probably Michaela Cole, because yeah, she keeps herself to herself. I don't know so much about her, and I just want to sit down with her and know what goes on in her brilliant mind. And I feel like she'd actually be fun as well. I feel like we'd have a laugh. Yes.
I think so as well.
Yeah.
I think so. And that's great. And honestly, when was coming up with that question, I was, my angle was like, not even something that's like televised, no phones, just you sitting with these women, enjoying their company, their stories, and talking about everything in life. And, honestly, like, I would love to ask, especially Shirley Chisholm, if she was here, like today, how would she feel about specifically like the reproductive rights with all the work that she did to make sure that it was prioritized in healthcare? And now it's like it's prioritized in a different way that feels very limiting. So I would love to talk to her and see how she feels about what's going on in history and for women. Like, what are we doing to really, advance women's rights and make sure that, yeah, their bodies are respected regardless of whether they decide to have children or not. So, yeah.
Yeah, I almost want to ask her, what can we do to kind of bring back what all of the work you did? How can we make sure that your legacy is not in vain? But I guess that's what we are figuring out. That's what we have to be making sure that we are all collectively doing, which I guess we are in our own ways with you,
Yeah.
with Brit+Co, me with this thread of gold. I think that is part of making sure that that stays at the forefront of all of our thoughts and, all of our agendas, I suppose.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
agree. I agree. And that's one of the things I probably why I connected so much to chapter two when you're talking about us as women. We do so much to, kind of prove that, hey, I matter. And just like, man, how can I use my job as a journalist to kind of advance conversations about different things? It's like, well, write about them, talk about the hard things, which is I've been talking about motherhood and all the things that come with that lately. And I was like, okay, that guess this counts as a form of my own activism and resistance in life.
Definitely. I love that. Talk about the hard things. That's really powerful. Wow. Because it is, of course, that's activism. That really is, the pen is mightier than the sword. That's the saying. So,
Yeah.
mm, I love that.
Yeah. So first of all, I could talk to you all day long about all the things. But I'm so thrilled. Like I said, this thread of gold is such a beautiful piece of work, and I cannot wait for everyone to get their hands on it. And I know you must be really, really excited about that. I mean, it's your debut novel. I'm excited. Like I said, I can't wait for people to read it. And I thank you so much for allowing us to interview you, get to know a little bit more about you and everything that you're doing to advance conversations that are pretty much hard.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Honestly,
You're
this has been a
welcome.
joy. I could have spoken to you for hours as well, but it's really nice to, yeah, get to know you a bit as well and also talk about this thread of gold. I'm so excited. I'm moving to New York on Friday. I'll be there for most of the month. Are you in New York? No.
No, I'm actually, I wish, and I'm like, I'm this close because literally a part of my team lives in New York. I'm in Georgia. And I'm like, oh my God, I feel like I need to eventually go to New York. That's always been my thing. Like, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna move there one day. I'm gonna move there one day. You feel like I think
Atlanta.
all signs are pointing for me to leave here. And I mean, I've been in the
Okay.
South for like ever, so I think I am eventually gonna move there. Are you
That's
excited?
exciting. That's exciting. I'm so excited. Yeah. I mean, it feels like it feels like my life's about to change. I just can't wait to be over there and experience the book as it makes its way into the world. And I will also be in the same place. I just think that's really exciting.
Oh my
Um,
gosh, that's great. So, debut novel, you're moving to New York. This could not be like a more exciting time for you.
I
I'm
know.
excited for you. Like, I'm gonna clap. I'm gonna go ahead and clap for you because I wish you all the best of luck on Pub Day and just with your move and everything because I know moving can be a little stressful.
Hmm,
So I'm
hmm.
fingers crossed that everything goes smoothly for you and that you have just an amazing published day.
Thank you, Jasmine. I really appreciate that.